Hi, this is Bob Papa, voice of the New York Football Giants, and this is the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast.
Welcome back, Giants fans, to the latest edition of the Big Blue UK and Ireland podcast in association with Andy's Man Club. Lads, remember, it is okay to talk. This episode, we are 66% British, 33% Irish, but as always, 100% Giants. Dan is working tonight. However, we are here to chat about quarterbacks and running back rooms. And joining me are Kev and Shane. Boys, how are we doing? Are we looking forward to getting into the top end of the roster?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's good to have you back on. Obviously, Dan's not here this week, which is always a shame. But it's good to have you back and be back on here with Kev. I'm probably going to say to everyone who's listening and watching live, probably want to fasten your seatbelts on this one. We're going to get into the quarterback conversation, probably a little bit too much into a conversation that's probably been spoken about numerous times on previous episodes, but this is the episode where we're really going to get into it. And obviously the running backs as well. There's an interesting discussion to have there.
Yeah, definitely good to be back. Good to be on with you boys. I've been back home in Ireland for a funeral this weekend, so I haven't been able to keep up to date with too much Giants goings on. But I'm really, really looking forward to sitting down and talking to you guys tonight and getting back into the swing of things, because this is the interesting topic, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Just a caveat before we sort of start. It looks like YouTube got a bit screwy and decided that we were going live on Wednesday and not tonight. So if anyone's got their notifications turned on for when we go live, guess what? You got notified to say that we've gone live, and you probably already watching. And also, I've changed jobs this last week, and the tech setup that I have has gone haywire. So I have an iPad here, I have my laptop here, which is where StreamYard is. So if I'm looking all over the place, don't worry, I haven't gone crazy. Now, before we begin, if you are watching this live on YouTube or Facebook, please do join in with the conversation in the comments. Subscribe if you haven't already, and give this video a thumbs up. It helps us massively. Now, before we get into the state of plays, let's round up the latest goings on. So we might as well kick off with what is happening right now over in East Rutherford and what happened yesterday with OTAs. So, yes, the build-up to mandatory minicamp has begun, and the Giants have held their first OTA sessions yesterday and today. There are a few bits of news out of East Rutherford yesterday. Nothing too tasty, but we'll go through those. Daniel Jones, we'll get into him later. He took part in 7-on-7 drills, completing passes to receivers Wandale Robinson and Malik Neighbours. He did not, I repeat, did not take part in the 11-on-11 sessions. That was left to potential backup starter. We don't know for sure just yet, do we? Drew Lock. Devin Singletary, he was the man who scored the first touchdown of the offseason with a catch and run. And while we're talking about first interception of the offseason went to undrafted rookie free agent Alex Johnson. Now, Johnson actually led the Pac-12 with 5 interceptions in 2023. So it's good to see that he's carrying on that. As we said before, Neighbours caught a pass from Jones. He also caught several passes from Drew Lock during some 7-on-7 and 11-on-11 sessions. And fellow rookie and Shane's man crush, Theo Johnson, also had a reception during the day. And then lastly, on Rookie Watch, Andrew Phillips broke up an early pass in 7-on-7s. And interestingly, there was an interview with him where he revealed that both himself and Tyler Nubin have sparked up quite a good relationship since meeting after the draft in East Rutherford. Apparently, they've been out to dinner a few times, and Andrew also kind of spoke up about what Nubin's like on the field and how vocal he is and how much of a leader he believes he's going to be. So that's enough of the OTA stuff. Shane, there was a little bit of 100th anniversary surprises last week, and then another one for season ticket holders. Andy's on mute. I thought I was all over the place.
There was obviously following on from last week. We spoke about the 100th year of the Giants and some of the things that they'd done as well. But they also revealed another gift for fans, in particular season ticket holders. We're going to be getting a phenomenal box set. So this box set opens up to reveal a message from John Marrott and Steve Tisch, and also include a set of replica Super Bowl rings in a display box and a double-sided commemorative ticket with one of the sides replicating an original design from 1925 and the other featuring the 100th season logo with a collection of Giants legends. Now, that box set's incredible. Side question, which is, you're going to go for on eBay? You know people are going to be listing. It's going to happen without a doubt. You're going to get the people who really couldn't give a toss and are like, I can make some money here. That's if there's even eBay listings already. Obviously, with the things that you get in, either of you guys been tempted to get a season ticket just to get this sent out to you? You know, how much do you wish they'd run this overseas for us?
Be it 100%. I mean, it's something like, I'd love to have it. I've actually got a replica of the 2012 Super Bowl ring, got from some site that I won't name. But this actual box is phenomenal looking. It's such a cool collector's piece. And, if they did put this out for sale, I mean, like, how many people would snap this up? Because it's just something so cool. Like, we've all got like a little man cave or home office or a little sort of space for ourselves in this day and age. So many people have them. To have something like that in it would just be absolutely class. And I know I would invest in one and maybe not tell the missus how much they cost.
I mean, I don't even know how much a season ticket really goes for, to be honest. So that would be an interesting sort of benchmark, wouldn't it, to try and figure out exactly where you're kind of looking in the monetary value. But yeah, it would be one of those things that you would definitely be looking at. It'd be interesting to know as well how it works. I know I don't want to bring up the medium Pepsi fiasco, but I know that a lot of people were very upset with that because it was done on per account, not per season ticket. And it'd be interesting to know if this is a similar thing. I mean, for the money that you're being charged and the money that it probably took to make all of these, I'd imagine it'd be one per account. But it's just nice that the Giants are doing something a little bit different and a little bit more special for the fans, because it's 100 seasons for them, but it's also, I very much doubt anyone's watching it for the 100th season in a row, but it's a big thing for the fans as well, and it's just nice that they're giving back in that way. Shane, how much would you spend on one of these? How much would you pay? I know you're a collector of the retro stuff.
I've got a figure in mind. I might just keep it to myself. Don't people thinking that I'm the Billy Big Balls over here wheeling here.
Right. Kev, not important news, but a little bit of news about Mike Kafka.
Yeah, Mike Kafka, the offensive coordinator, has been selected to participate in the NFL's coaching accelerator program during the league's spring meetings in Nashville, Tennessee. Now, the program provides an opportunity for candidates to network directly with club owners, executives, whilst also providing leadership development sessions. It's kind of aimed at senior women and minority prospects to help diversify coaching talent. Kafka is the only Giants coach attending. However, ex-Giants Lunda Wells and DeAndre Smith have also been selected.
So while we're kind of on that subject, and Shane, I'll go to you first on this one. Does it kind of seem like everything points towards this being a kind of one and done season for Kafka, and no matter what happens, he's gone at the end of the season? I know it's really early to say that, but kind of just little things like this kind of accentuate that point, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking with the fact that he's been coveted for the last 2 years. I think was it last year? Was it Arizona or Indy? I think he was in the final running for, and obviously he was
Seahawks.
Yeah, and then this season the Seahawks as well. And then you throw in the fact that we made him, is it a joint assistant head coach or whatever
Associate assistant head coach, yeah.
Yeah, we've given him a new title, seemingly to keep him tidy this year. I mean, like, just to throw like a little bit of a spanner in the works. Is it his last year if Dayball goes? Do management maybe say full time with the Giants as an head coach? Just a spanner in the works to something else to think about. He's obviously going to go on to become an head coach. Does it necessarily have to be at another team if Brian Dayball has a poor year this year?
It's a fair point, isn't it? I mean, Kev, what are your thoughts on this? Kev was obviously highly touted, despite the fact that the Giants faltered last year on offense. Doesn't seem to have hurt his chances. I know he didn't get the head coaching job, but he still got interviews. So clearly there's a want for him, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's obviously smashing these interviews. He's obviously going in and showing his acumen. And, everyone's talked about maybe Dayball taking play calling duties off him this year. And that'll be really interesting to see. I mean, I don't know if that's going to affect his head coaching opportunities, because, he wouldn't necessarily call the plays there. But, frustratingly, he is in his last year of his deal. So, like, at the end of the season, he can just walk without sort of any sort of compensation towards the Giants or anything like that. But, I mean, it kind of shows that things off the field are kind of going in the direction we want them to, in the sense that, we feel like the GM and the head coach are kind of doing things right off the field. And our assistant head coach, offensive coordinator, has been touted for head coaching roles. I just wish, as all fans do, we want to try and translate that positivity to on-field success.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're all looking for an improvement, and I can't imagine Kafka's happy that he's had the play calling taken away, but it kind of is what it is, and at the end of the day, we'll see how it goes. It's interesting, that point you make, Shane, about, could he take over at the end of the season? I mean, if it goes really badly, could we see a kind of mid-season takeover sort of thing? You really can't rule anything out this year. It's going to be something a bit crazy to watch. And then lastly, when we're looking at Giant news, the Giants were unable to secure their potential Daniel Jones heir in this year's draft. However, there is a possibility that they could trade for one of last year's prospects that the Giants apparently had genuine interest in. Justin Mello of the Draft Network has touted the Giants, along with the Bucks and the Rams, as a team who could or should make a play for Lions quarterback Hendon Hooker. The 26-year-old was selected last year as a potential step-in for Jared Goff. However, with Goff signing his new 4-year, $212 million deal last week, it will be tough. It will be a tough run, to the starting job. Now, Shane, Kev, you both would have looked at Hooker in last year's draft prospect rundown. Shane, is this a move you could get behind?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there would be a couple of asterisks next to it. Obviously, I don't know how well he's recovered from the torn ACL, if there's any significant damage there potentially. Excuse me. I mean, Jamie's right. I mean, we all need a hooker in our life, do we not? Yeah, cheers for that.
Is that for the rugby fans out there, yeah?
But no, in all seriousness, I don't know what the state of play is in regards to his injury. He's someone who I did like quite a lot last year. Do some research into this as well. It was interesting because Pat Leonard tweeted on the 30th of April last year, confirming that the Giants did view Tennessee quarterback Hendon Hooker as a genuine option at value in this draft if he fell far enough, considering he redshirted last year. So there was obviously kind of some interest there. Now, whether this is just someone putting 2 and 2 together and coming out with 5, as tends to be the way for probably 90% of these type of articles that you get, I don't know. But, is it someone I'll be behind? Definitely, I'll definitely be behind it as long as there's some reassurance that the injuries are behind. What you don't want to do is replace one injured quarterback with another injured quarterback, or injury-prone quarterback, I should say.
Kev, whereabouts did you have Hendon Hooker in your rankings, if you can remember, and what were your thoughts on him coming out of college?
Yeah, I liked him a lot coming out of college. I think one of the downsides was the age. He was a little bit of an older prospect, and those multiple ACL injuries as well were kind of red flags coming out. He's obviously redshirted this year. Now, I always find it difficult because, like, we obviously didn't draft him last year. What round did he go in? Do we know? Was it the 5th round or something?
Genuinely can't remember.
Have a quick
But
look.
I mean, he was taken sort of mid round. We don't know sort of what he's shown at.
Yeah, round 3, pick 68.
But so this is an interesting one. I mean, like, age shouldn't really be that big a deal. He's obviously redshirted now, staying healthy. If you believe he's got a genuine chance to dislodge Daniel Jones as a starter, and when we get into the conversation, Daniel Jones is the starter. They're going to say there's no competition in this camp unless Daniel Jones has a horrific injury of some sort. Daniel Jones is the starter. So you have to look at it through those eyes. That's the way the GM and the head coach are looking at it of the organization. Now, if you can see him as a potential genuine starter in this league, then you've got to kick the tires and kind of see what it would cost. Because, he's what, 1 year into a 4-year rookie deal.
Yeah, and I guess the injury concerns were there this year as well for Penix, weren't there? But the Giants were obviously brought him in for a visit and were relatively high on him. So they're obviously not afraid if the talent's there to maybe take the risk, despite the fact that they've clearly been burnt in the last few years, especially last year. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. You're right, Shane. It's probably much to do about nothing, and someone's just trying to write something for a bit of clicks. But the Lions had a joint practice with the Giants last season. I don't think it's been confirmed. I read something about the fact that Dan Campbell was very keen to kind of pay the Giants back and come over to our side of the country to have a joint practice this year. I've got a feeling he was told off by the Maras for leaking the last year's joint practices. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. And while we're kind of on that topic of quarterbacks, we might as well get into it. It's the biggest position at any football club. It's always going to be the most contentious position depending on how the player performs. You can have Patrick Mahomes, who's going to be solid there for years and years to come, or you could have Ryan Leaf or Zach Wilson. You really have no idea how it's going to go, but they are always a key cog in the machine and almost will certainly win or lose you games. Our quarterback room is interesting to say the least this year. And Kev, you have the distinct honour of talking about the Giants franchise quarterback.
Just something just came to my head as well there about Hendon Hooker. Is just quickly, just before we put that to bed, the trade deadline has been put back this year as well to week 9. It's November 5th. It's usually like mid October. So if the Giants kind of see no real progress with Jones, or he gets injured again, or it looks like we're going to have a 10 to 20 pick and not like a high pick or something like that, maybe they might pull the trigger before trade deadline. Or don't be surprised if we end up the season picking 15. Daniel Jones has shown no progress, and maybe try and trade for someone like Hendon Hooker then at the end of the season leading into the draft. Just something I thought about there while you were talking about him. But yes, Daniel Jones. So Daniel Jones last season, short-lived and disappointing are probably the best ways to describe his 2023 season. It started with an embarrassing shutout against the Cowboys. And outside of that second half against the Cardinals in week 2, Jones just did not perform like the quarterback that got the $160 million contract. Admittedly, he wasn't helped by an offensive line that was missing Thomas, which saw him get pressure on 45.5% of his dropbacks, leading to a whopping 30 sacks. The problem was that Jones developed a skittish and nervous nature and saw him missing receivers both with his throws and with his reads. A neck injury and a torn ACL compounded a terrible 2023. It led to myriads of questions surrounding his future prior to both free agency and the draft. The Giants reportedly scared of Jones's injury guarantee. Could this be the last we see of Daniel Jones? Now, just going into some of the stats there from last year, he had 909 passing yards, which is tied 44th. He had 2 touchdowns, tied 50th. 6 interceptions, tied 31st. Completion percentage of 67.5, which is 20th. Sacks 30, which is 23rd. QBR rating of 70.5. That is awful. Rushing yards 206. Rushing touchdowns 1 and 4 fumbles. Now, obviously, they were only in very, very limited snaps there, so take them with a little bit of a pinch of salt. But then we look at the expectations going forward for Daniel Jones. Now, the Giants say he's QB1 when healthy, but that's the burning question. Jones tore his ACL against the Raiders back on November 5th, and as yet haven't been given any concrete information as to how the recovery is going, but apart from progressing through the stages. So, I personally, like I said before, do believe that they see him progressing well and being able to start the season as their number 1 quarterback. I think it's a chance they're going to take, and they're going to try and go forward with him and have Daniel Jones as a competent backup, as Drew Lock as a competent backup. But last year was a disaster for Jones. And for many displayed for all the reasons why he is in the long-term future. But if Jones can return to his 2022 form that saw him go and win a playoff game, what would he need to do to turn opinions of him around and for people to say, yes, Daniel Jones is a franchise quarterback? Shane, what do you think?
Here we go.
Oh boy.
Where's my popcorn?
In all honesty, nothing. Daniel Jones can't change my opinion of him anymore. We're going into year 6 and we still don't know what we've actually got. That is the answer for me. Now, am I going to be behind Daniel Jones this season? If and when he's under centre, of course I am. He's the quarterback for the New York Football Giants. Whoever's under centre, whether it's Daniel Jones, whether it's Drew Lock, whether it's Tommy DeVito, you're going to be behind him. I'm not going to be willing them to fail, to get injured and all that sort of stuff. But for me, when you've got a quarterback for 6 years and you're still going, this is the year. This has been the year for the last 4 bloody years. Like, I'm fed up with hearing this is the year, this is the year. Like, for me, Daniel Jones needs to be gone at the end of the season. We need to end this experiment now. End it, move up and go and get the quarterback that you're going to want next year. If that involves moving from 19, 20, whatever, up to number 1, number 2, number 3, you do what it takes. You cannot succeed without a competent franchise quarterback at this level. And I think the key thing for me is the front office are obviously, I want to say, have a similar mindset this off-season. You don't put the work into quarterbacks that the front office put this year if you think Daniel Jones is the guy. You don't look at trading up to number 3 for a quarterback that you want if you think that Daniel Jones is the guy. For me, Daniel Jones is done after this year. I think his only successful year, in my personal opinion, was scheme. It wasn't the player. He was schemed to look good.
So, Craig, do you think not just would it be stats for you? Would it be level of plays? What would it look like for you to say Daniel Jones played well this season and we do not need to draft a QB in the next draft?
Sure, that's such a good question, Kev, because there is so much stat padding in sports these days that it's very difficult to get a valid opinion of somebody and then someone just go, yeah, but this. And stat padding's a thing, isn't it? Garbage touchdowns and stuff like that. Like, they make certain players look better than they are. So I think you've kind of got to have it on a multifaceted approach. The stats have to be good because you can't be good and the stats be completely crap as well. Like, it's such a hard thing to really justify. Like, I think what it comes down to is, can he make plays? can he elevate the team? Because elevation of yourself is a very different thing to elevating a team. Do the rest of the team trust him? That's a massive question. You know, we can talk as long as we want about our opinions, but it's his teammates' opinions that really, really matter. And then it's, can you deliver on the biggest stage? And that's the biggest hit on Daniel Jones, isn't it? Is prime time games. We are absolutely trash. And I'm so glad that we don't have as many as we did last year. I'm pretty sure we still have 4. I think we've got a Monday, a Thanksgiving, a Thursday night, and a couple of Sunday nights. Yeah. So it's nice to see that we don't have many. But the one thing that we haven't done in the last 5 years with Daniel Jones at the centre, we've barely beaten the Eagles. We've barely beaten the Cowboys. And I don't even want to get back into last season because, my God, I still get PTSD from that week 1 game. And we barely win in prime time. So the one moment when you have all the eyes on you and you can really, dispel the opinions and really win people over is when he normally plays his worst and the team plays their worst. That's what it's going to come down to. Is it's, everyone puts people on a pedestal nowadays and put them in the spotlight, and that's where you're expected to shine. And Jones just never does it, and it's just, that's the thing that it's not really, what's he got to do to turn opinions of him from a statistical basis. He's kind of got to change people's opinions of it as a person, which is wrong in a way. He really is up against the kosh with 90% of our fan base, and it's understandable in a way, but you can only support what's out there. We've all said we would always support whoever's under centre, but it's a really, really difficult season for Daniel Jones, and I do believe it's a lose-lose situation for him. I mean, obviously, We've got, you've read out all of those bits there, Kev. It would be interesting to know, obviously, your opinion. It's a shame Dan's not here because I know Dan is very much on he's the brighter side of life to us three, isn't he? We can all be. Shane's like the shadowy place that we don't talk about very often. Me and Kev tend to get splinters on the fence a lot of the time, and Dan's like Mr. Positivity. So it'd be interesting to see if you agree with what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. There's a few things that sort of stand out for me. I think you're 100% right with the stats. I think, just if you throw 2 critical interceptions in the first half, and the team's up by 40, and you throw 3 or 4 touchdowns in the second half to get you back just the stat pad, that's not going to look great. I think for me, I think we've done 2 things, and I hope this is true, in the sense that I hope and I think we have got offensive line to a place where it can be average to above average. That's all it has to be, is average. Competent offensive line play. Now, I'm not going to say if we have that, Daniel Jones will be good. What I'm saying is, we have a competent offensive line play to give him a platform. Now, if he's still seeing ghosts and he still can't make the reads, then it doesn't matter what type of offensive line you have now. He's scarred for life. We've sort of said, in the past, is Daniel Jones being broken because of the bad offensive line over the years? Now, if we give him a good platform and then he can take his time in the pocket and go through his reads and make the correct reads, that's the type of stuff I want to see. The second part is weapons. Have we given him weapons? And I think with Malik Neighbors being one of the best receivers in this draft class, you're giving him a bona fide number 1 wide receiver. Now, if you look at that wide receiver room, you could have a mixture on the field at any time of Neighbors, Slayton, Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson, and even solid player like a Hodgins. Any type of mixture of those players. You can play Neighbors in the slot, and you can have the 2 bigger guys on the outside. You can play all type of mixtures. You bring in a red zone weapon in Theo Johnson from Penn State. He's got a lot to learn. He's got a lot of nuances to learn about the tight end position. But he scored something like 7 or 8 touchdowns in the red zone last year for Penn State. Now, Shane can talk about this more than me, but the Penn State quarterback play was questionable. And some of the decisions, that he made were just crazy, in my opinion. But anyway, that's for next season when we talk about QBs in next year's draft. But so you're giving him that like more weapons now, and if you can give him offensive line play, then it's up to him. Have the front office and the scouts done both those two things? I think they have. I hope they have. Now, if they have done that, again, like I said, it comes down to him to go through the playbook, make the reads, make the plays. And there's one big thing, and you touched on it perfectly, is in the big moments, can the scheme win games? Can you game manage and be like maybe of a lesser Goff, manage the team to wins, but can you do what you just said? Can you pick the team up when needed, put them on your back on primetime games and against divisional rivals, and go and win a few of those games? Go win those games. Can you do that? Those aren't stuff that is shown in stats. Those are stuff that's shown in grit, determination, and showing that you can put the team on your back and go and win football games in this league when it's needed.
The thing for me with Daniel Jones, I've got a question for you too, because obviously you're closer to the bright side than what I am.
Only got splinters on one cheek.
At what point are you willing to call time on Daniel Jones? Because it's now year 6, and we still can't categorically turn around and say, yeah, and for like 2 or 3 years in a row, it's been, this is the year. But at some point, you have got to have the balls and cut the rope on the balloon.
I think this year is that year. I think he'd almost have to win a Super Bowl this year to stay, and that kind of sounds extreme, but with the out that we have in the contract, the fact that we're low on cap space, and there's been chatter about restructures for other players, but Daniel Jones, it almost seems to be a categorical no, we're not touching that contract. The fact that there are analysts and pundits out there who are going, that injury guarantees like a dark cloud hanging over the head of Joe Shane in case he gets injured, it's massive. I would always support the quarterback no matter what throughout the season, and always will them to do well, unless we are horrific again. But for me, the end of the line for Daniel Jones is January.
That's fair. Do you know what? I'm gonna get the other splinters on the other cheek now, and I'm gonna say that at the end of week 2, after the game on the 15th of September, after we play the Vikings at home and the Commanders away, if Daniel Jones hasn't looked like the player I've just talked about, then for me it's done. Because then he'll never get there. Then if he goes out and plays those first 2 games and we're not 2-0 or we're 0-2 and he is just throwing interceptions, fumbled the ball, seeing ghosts, then for me that's it. Then I would be like, okay, you cannot be fixed now. You've shown what you are now. But those 2 games, for me, go out and do some of the stuff that I just talked about and show me that we want to give you more games. Now, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I know it sounds a bit drastic, but like, again, after those 2 games, if he hasn't shown what he can be, then he is what he is.
Yeah. I mean, I agree with that. I think, if he's seeing ghosts and the offensive line is holding up well, but he's still not able to produce, then it's got to be one of the shortest leashes we've had. I mean, him and Evan Neal might have a competition between the two of them as who's shorter at the end of the day. But I think as a whole for the Giants, Daniel Jones, he won't be on the roster past this season, in my opinion.
I mean, as Jamie says there, let's say he has a great year, you've then got the choice: do you cut, utilise the opt-out, or keep and then restructure? Because obviously the cap issues. And then Kev, you'll appreciate this comment from Kieran. It's been his year more times on a certain team from the other side of Glasgow, Kev. I don't know what Kieran thinks there.
Apparently they're still coming.
So before we move on to Drew Lock, just a quick question for you both. Do you think that the Giants should be scared of this injury clause that could potentially screw us over the future seasons? Or do you think it's just a case of football is what football is, and an injury could happen at any time, and we just need to roll with the punches? Kev?
I mean, yeah. So I'm going to go away and look at this week, okay? Because I want to really understand this, because I think there's certain wording in there that it's not as drastic as we think it is, in the sense that I think it is if he has to basically pass a physical at the end of next season. So at some point next season, I don't know whether it's February, March, April, I can't remember what the exact date is, but that's where, if he can't pass a physical then, so even if he gets injured and it's nothing major, it won't affect it. But I need to go and look at the wording and look at the details, because I do think it says guaranteed for injury, and people sort of read that as, oh my God, if he gets injured in the game, we're absolutely screwed. So I need to go back and look at it, because I don't think it's as drastic as people are making it right to be.
No, I mean, you are right. I do believe it is. He has to pass a physical next, at the end of this coming season. But with the neck injuries in the ACL, it's definitely a risk. Shane, what were your thoughts on that?
I'm not really too fussed by it, to be honest with you. I think at the end of the day, number one, football's a contact sport, so you know full well what you're doing. And number two, the Giants chose to put that in the contract. You know the risk when you put it in there, and if it does come back to bite you on the arse, that was your decision at the end of the day, and you've got to live with that. So we'll see what happens. Just want to quickly mention, Holt was just mentioned who to replace him with. Apparently next year's draft isn't QB heavy. I know Kev says we're getting to the QBs kind of next year, probably week 5, week 6, in all honesty. But in all seriousness, I wouldn't worry about how heavy next year's quarterback class is. You always get about 2 or 3 quarterbacks that are ball out, such as Burrow and Daniels did. So I wouldn't worry too much about next year's quarterback class. We will be getting into it a lot sooner than next year. I'll guarantee you that much.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we'll be watching and following along, as all the people listening and watching should as well. He's a Giant podcast on YouTube. I mean, and those guys are brilliant, and they'll be having their top 5 lists at each position from the start of the season, pretty much. So I'll be paying attention to who they're recommending and stuff like that, and we can see how the quarterbacks develop as the season goes on.
And as well, to be fair, sorry, Craig. If our season is looking like it's done come week 6, week 7, let's say we're 1-6 or something like that, maybe it is a feature that we might introduce onto this podcast, where we'll spend 5 or 10 minutes talking about college quarterbacks for people to kind of be aware of in advance of the draft, so we can kind of best inform you guys. So you know who to look out for and who might be declaring and balling out. But obviously that's a long way away.
Right, so now, Shane, before you get into the next quarterback in the room, just a quick shout out to Jasmeet Giant Singh at the bottom there. Massive supporter of ours, and massive thank you to him, as we always do, for what he did for us last year in New Jersey. Shane, backup quarterback. Let's go.
Backup, but for how long? That's going to be the question on everyone's lips. So obviously, the guy we're talking about, it's not Tommy DeVito, it's Drew Lock. So Lock was placed firmly behind Geno Smith on the Seattle Seahawks depth chart last season, and his limited game time, which saw him appear in 4 games, 2 as a starter, didn't produce much outside of 2 key moments. The first key moment was back in week 11 against the LA Rams. That saw Lock come in for the injured Smith late in the 4th quarter. Seahawks oddly called 3 passes for Lock on his first series, and the outcome was tipped and nearly intercepted. Completed pass for a loss and an interception. The Rams would then go on to score a field goal off this and take the lead. Then moment 2 was much better for Drew Lock. He started the week 15 game against the Eagles, and he shined at the most important time. The Seahawks were down 17-13 with under 2 minutes remaining, and Lock orchestrated a 10-play, 92-yard drive on which he completed 5 passes, including the 29-yard strike to Jackson Smith and Jigba for the game-winning touchdown. So Drew Lock's probably already got a lot of fans in MetLife Stadium just for that game-winning drive against the Eagles. His 2022 stats, I say, he didn't play much. These stats are like a little bit skewed, really. But in what this is his 2020. Is these his 2022 stats or 23, Craig?
2023, sorry.
2023, yeah. So say he only had them couple of starts that we've mentioned, but he passed for 543 yards, which was 50th in the league. Touchdowns was 3, tied for 44th. Interceptions was 3, tied for 47th. Completion percentage was 63.2%, which was 45th in the league. 6 sacks, which was 52nd, and a QB rating of 81.2, which was 48th. It's a lot better than 70.1, I'm just going to say. Now, the expectations for Drew Lock is he's going to have the ability to push Daniel Jones this off-season, and the Giants are going to give him the opportunity to battle with DJ. He's not going to kind of excite you or get you out your seat. He's not going to, be running around, probably a little bit like Daniel does, to be fair. Daniel can excite you when he gets on the move. Drew Lock's not that kind of quarterback. And he's probably not going to be the long-term solution. Bruce Dable has shown anything with what he was able to get out of Tommy DeVito last season. It's that he can still run a functional offense regardless of who he's out there. And he took us to the playoffs with Daniel Jones at quarterback 2 years ago. That's the proof in the pudding for me. But Lock's contract, it is one of the high ones given to the backups this past off-season. How do you think he will fare, Craig?
It's hard to say because he really hasn't seen the field that often. But if you think back to when he was with the Broncos, he was relatively good. He's like you said, he's not going to set the world alight and go out there and throw 6-7 touchdowns and run for a couple of touchdowns and show off his wheels. But what he could potentially do with the right scheme, and as we've already said, Brian Dable and Mike Kafka seem to be able to get out of their quarterbacks what they can. He can make us functional. It'll be interesting to see what the Giants' kind of over/under is for this season, and what that would be, what the difference would be with Jones under center and Locke under center. And just to kind of get an idea as to, what the bettors, so kind of see the difference between the two are, just because of the fact that I can't see it being that much of a gap. So I think if he comes in, he'll be steady, but it might just be one of those kind of, 8 and 9, 7 and 10 kind of seasons.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely... I think I've said in the previous podcast, he has a little bit of a gunslinger mentality, something that, Brian Dable quite likes in his quarterbacks. But obviously the risk reward there, obviously his interceptions are quite high because of that. I think he's a good player to bring in, and he was a player that we named under, potential signings for the backup quarterback position. I think he's a good player to come in to push Daniel Jones. If Daniel Jones gets re-injured or lack of form, He's definitely a player to come in, I think, can steady the ship and run Dable's offense, like you just said. Could it be a potential starting quarterback in the future? No. Could he come in, steady the ship, like I just said? Yeah, I do believe he can.
So, Shane, what are your kind of thoughts on DeVito's outlook for this season? Do you feel like he can take over this offense if necessary?
Sorry,
not DeVito, Locke. I'm staring at DeVito's name, that's why.
But I was just going to say, obviously Daniel Jones will get injured at some point. Then Drew Lock comes in, so DeVito's going to be QB too. So he's only going to be one injury away from getting snaps. But yeah, I think he can just come in and be serviceable. Now, kind of not going back to the Daniel Jones topic, so to speak, but I firmly believe that when we signed Tyrod Taylor 2 years ago, the plan was to keep Jones for the first year, let him go, like Kev's just disappeared, let him go. Tyrod was going to be the bridge QB. Now, I'm not quite sure that being a bridge QB suits Drew. Like if the Giants do decide to move on from Daniel Jones, obviously, when I say a bridge QB, you want someone who's a veteran quarterback who's kind of been there and done it, whether it's, you know, a Tyrod Taylor, a Derek Carr, Jameis Winston. Not saying necessarily great quarterbacks, but just someone who's an old vet that's been around a bit and knows. And I don't know if Drew Lock can have the capability to do that if need be. But I think if he does have to step into the starting role, and you know, let's be honest, I'm sure we're all expecting Drew Lock to start a game at some point this season. It's, you know, it's going to happen. That Daniel can't stay fit at the end of the day. And like, you know, like I mentioned, you've then got to just trust that Dable and Kafka have put the right system in place for Drew Lock to succeed and give his team the best chance of winning. And I believe that can do that.
So obviously we've got two more quarterbacks as well on the 90-man roster at the moment. So we'll just quickly fire through those two and then wrap up the quarterback chat. So Tommy DeVito, from unknown to hometown starter. Last year was probably even too out there for Tommy's wildest dreams, but due to the injuries to Jones and Tyrod, it happened, and say it quietly for the tank train and the detractors, but it was a little bit fun for a little period in there. It didn't start that way, admittedly, with DeVito throwing 7 passes in 50 snaps against the Jets in Week 8. I've forgotten all about that. And then the following 2 weeks saw blowout losses to Las Vegas and Dallas. But then something a little special happened. Tommy helped the Giants to 3 straight wins, catapulting him and the infamous hand gesture to autograph sessions and adverts. The Tommy experience would then take a road bump, with games against the Saints and the Eagles ending in losses and Tyrod retaking the starting job for the rest of the season. But by then, DeVito had his 15 minutes of fame. Again, some 2023 stats for Tommy DeVito. And obviously, again, just bear in mind that his sample size was small. Passing yards, 1,101, which was 41st. 8 touchdowns, tied for 31st. 3 interceptions, tied 47th. Completion percentage of 64, which was 41st. 37 sacks, tied for 11th. And a QB rating of 89.2, which was tied for 29th outright. Now, the expectations for Tommy, he could fade back into the background with either a practice squad spot and being sort of there ready to jump up if there are injuries again, or he could potentially be poached by another team if he does end up on that practice squad. But don't think that his spot is a certainty, as he will go up against who we are going to talk about right now in Nathan Rourke, Kev.
Yeah, Nathan Rourke, no active game time last season for Rourke, who started the season on Jacksonville's practice squad. But he did yo-yo around the Jags a bit. He signed to the active roster, waived, signed to the practice squad, signed to the active roster again, waived again by mid-December. And on the 18th, he was claimed off waivers by the Patriots before being released on the 6th of May. He also, fun stat, he actually tried out as a wide receiver in 2020 with the Giants. And he made it to their rookie tryout, minicamp tryout. But the expectations for him is, you know, he was in the CFL, Canadian Football League, you know, his revelation. He played 2021 and 2022. But you can see him pushing DeVito for a practice squad spot. His lack of game time last year, though, probably kind of against him. A 25-year-old, you know, all his film's going to be Canadian Football League films. So, you know, sort of that practice squad development type player, I can sort of see him like pushing DeVito for that.
Okay, so if we have a look at previous years, just quickly before we kind of give a prediction for what we think is going to happen here. So I've had a look back, and I'll go through our sort of the way that the rosters normally happen. So in the past 4 years, we've always had 2 quarterbacks on the main roster and then 1 sitting on the practice squad. No more, no less. It's very consistent, even before Joe Schoen and Brian Dable were here. So previous rosters, 2020, Jones and McCoy. 2021, Jones and Glennon. 2022 and 2023 were Jones and Taylor, so obviously a lot better there. Now, if you look at our current players, Daniel Jones has $35.5 million guaranteed this year. Next year, 30 million, and the year after 46.5, but there are no guarantees on those. And as we know, we have outs albeit with dead money. Drew Lock is only under contract this year for 5 million with just under 3 guaranteed. Tommy DeVito, 915,000, no guarantees, and Nathan Rourke has the exact same. Both of those are on rolling 1-year contracts. So if you look at the analysis just before, Jones's recovery from his torn ACL could see him miss time during training camp as he recovers, but it likely, as we've already said, won't affect his roster spot. It could, however, open up that camp battle that we've mentioned between himself and Locke. And DeVito's heroics last season, while admirable, don't guarantee him a spot on the roster or practice squad, as Rourke will fight for his opportunity. So, boys, prediction time. As I've said, the Giants only ever hold 2 main quarterbacks and then 1 on the practice squad. I think the 2 main quarterbacks are pretty obvious, but who do you think sews up that practice squad position? I'll go Shane first.
I think it'll be Tommy Cutlets. I think he showed enough last year, the fact that he knows the system. And, I just think the fact that they know what they're getting with him. He took meaningful snaps last year, not just snaps in preseason. He won us games. So I think he's comfortable QB3.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, everything Shane just said, there's no reason why he shouldn't make this team on the practice squad, that is. I know with the injury history and stuff like that, to hold 3 quarterbacks, though, I still think would be tough. And I can't see anyone taking Tommy off our practice squad to put them onto their current active roster. And when Nathan Rourke was brought in, we kind of did discuss him as being camp body, a camp arm, because of obviously Daniel Jones' sort of recovery time.
So there we have it. That's the quarterback chat that took all of 30 minutes, I think, or 40 minutes. We'll have to go back and check. But yeah, it was good. Good chat about that. Now, running backs, there are a lot more of these. And the running back room at the Giants looks very, very different compared to last year. Couple of vets, well, I guess you could call them vets. They're probably kicking into their 4th years, but I guess you could call them veterans. Have stuck around, but the obviously big changes are that a certain Judas no longer is with us, and Matt Breeder as well, who's been with the team for the last 2 years since the arrival of Joe Shane and Brian Dable, is also gone. So this is a little bit different here, but Shane, you're going to start us off with who is likely to be the lead back. And he's on mute again.
See a rookie. It's a rookie we've got in tonight.
I don't know what's going through my mind. So, you know what it is? I think it's talking about the running back position, and I know it's not going to be the same as previous years. So, we've got to talk about a different guy who's going to be wearing the number 26, and that's the first guy I'm going to talk about, our free agent acquisition, Devin Singletary. His role with the Texans was rumoured to be a backup role to Dameon Pierce last year. But, that's not how it shook out. And he would become the lead back and record a career high in yards. Now, the Texans' inside zone scheme fits Singletary better than it did Dameon Pierce. Although he was more of a steady than explosive back, he was pivotal in the Texans' run to the playoffs last season. Though the running game did stutter at the end of the season, Singletary showed multiple times during the season that he could carry the rock, especially in the win over the Titans, where he carried it 26 times for 121 yards. Now, his stats for this past year was 986 rushing yards, which was 17th in the league. He had 5 rushing touchdowns, which tied him for 21st. He had just the 1 fumble, which tied him for 31st. He averaged 4.1 yards per carry, which was 55th in the league. 719 yards after contact, which was 15th in the league, and he had 245 receiving yards, which was 26th in the league. However, he didn't have any receiving touchdowns. Now, Singletary, barring any injury, will be the Giants' lead back in the 2024 season and potentially beyond, since he has guaranteed money both this year and next. Now, he's not going to be that explosive back the Giants have had with previous running back, but he will bring us a moat and durability, having only missed one game over the last 4 years. He's also got the luxury of having less tread on the tyres than most of his peers of a similar age due to his underutilisation at Buffalo. And again, he's going to be a player that the coaching staff know pretty well. Obviously, Dave would have worked with him in Buffalo. So, I think that probably played a big reason as to why he was signed in the off-season as well.
Yeah, so obviously very, very different kind of back, as you've said, than what we're used to. What do you think the outlook is for Singletary this year, Kev? Do you think he will be that lead back, or is he going to be that lead back of the by committee?
I think, yeah, it'll be the case of that. I think the lead back by committee, I think you'll see a lot of touches to begin with. But as we'll discuss later on in the running back section, I think we could see someone else getting the bulk of the carries for the second half of the season.
And Shane, what do you think? Do you think we're going to see more of a running back by committee, a bit of a step change to what we've normally expected, having that running back with the behind the quarterback?
I don't think we're going to have as much of a running back by committee as people probably expect us to. We're going to go into all the players in great details, but you got the backups are a rookie, an undrafted rookie technically, a guy who's been in the league 1 year and a guy who's been in the league about 4 years and done nothing. So I think it's going to be. I think it'd be a little bit naive to maybe rely on a running back by committee, especially when a couple of players have not taken many snaps in the league at all. It might go on to become that as the season goes, but I think for the large part of the first half of the season, I think it's probably going to be relying on Devin Singletary more than people anticipate.
So while we're talking about one of those other running backs, we'll take a look at the next one on the list. And I think for the rest of the players we're going to talk about, they did so little last year that we don't actually have stats for them because it's not worth it. They literally did that little. So first one we'll talk about, surprisingly had more touches than Brightwell and Corbin, who are coming up shortly after, which was Eric Gray, which surprised me when I sort of looked into that. I just assumed that Brightwell for sure would have had more carries, but evidently not. Now, it was a tough rookie season for Gray as he found himself behind Judas and Breeder in the pecking order, only recording 17 rushing attempts in 13 appearances. 12 of those attempts came in week 5 against the Dolphins, where he picked up 25 yards and 2.1 yards per carry. But after that, unfortunately for the rookie, it was slim pickings. He did, however, have a nice short showing in the season finale, rushing 3 times for 19 yards. He did also contribute on special teams, playing 26% of the snaps, where he was asked to do a job on punt and kickoff returns, but he never really looked comfortable. And as soon as the Giants signed Gunner to be back there to return punts, he never got back there. So outside of Singletary, the expectation could be for these backs that it could be anyone's game. However, it's unlikely the Giants are going to give up completely on Gray after one season and a small sample size. Gray's shortcomings in pass blocking will need to be worked on, but he could benefit if the Giants do tend to, turn towards a running back by committee approach. Kev, we've bolted the next two together. It's so difficult to call them vets because they're not, are they? I think they're like 26 and 27 or something, but they are vets in that room apart from Singletary, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. They're two guys that kind of like have hung around a little bit, but not really done much. I mean, Brightwell appeared in 7 games for an ankle and hamstring injuries, saw him place on injured reserve. He was designated to return in week 16. However, he wasn't named in the 53-man roster for any of the final 3 games. Corbin was cut after training camp last year and ended up on the Panthers practice squad. He was re-signed off there late in October Was active for 5 games. He only recorded 1 rush, however, in Week 10 against the Cowboys. Both players contributed more in special teams in 23 than they did in the running game, as they both had over 100 snaps and combined for 4 tackles. You know, the expectation for them going forward, it could be an uphill battle for the two, as both in the final years of their deal, and they have to contend with 2 hungry rookies and a sophomore player who's itching for a larger role. Special teams could be the angle for them to take, but it will be interesting to see. I don't know if I hold out much hope.
So that's the sort of 3 running backs that were on the roster for last season. I don't know about you two. Shane, I'll come to you first on this, but is it kind of disappointing that we don't have that kind of third back who really could come in and do something last year? Like, you know, Breeder, I don't want to say he was similar to, so I'm going to say his name, Saquon. I don't want to say that he was similar, but because they are very different players, but they kind of, neither of them were really run between the numbers kind of players, were they? So is that kind of where we needed that third back to be better?
You mean for last season? Sorry.
Yes, yeah, for last season.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there was, you know, I don't want to say hopes, but I think it's fair to say that Eric Gray probably didn't perform the way we anticipated him to. I know me and Kev were quite pleased with that draft pick, and it's fair to say he didn't transition from college level to NFL level. Granted, he didn't get much opportunity for some stupid reason. He was fielding punts as well, which didn't help his case. But I know that coming out of college, one of his issues was pass protection. And if you can't pass protect, you're not really going to be getting snaps either. So, you know, it was disappointing that he didn't sort of come in and, I wouldn't say live up to the hype. There wasn't a hype as such, but we just wanted to see more from him than what we actually did. And then kind of behind that, I mean, I think, was it Deion Jackson ended up on the roster at one point, or
yeah.
You know, we were just scrimmaging around for like kind of, you know, running backs to just kind of come in, and we never really got anything, to be honest with you.
The Giants signing people off the streets. You're joking. You're joking.
We should have like a competition, like for the listeners, like what position are we going to be scrapping for off the streets this season? Because, like, you know, I think we've done wide receiver, cornerback, O-line, and running back so far.
Straight off the couch.
Kicker last year as well. Like, yeah. You know, what position is it going to be this year?
Kev, obviously, Corbin's one of my boys because of the Florida State ties, and obviously Brightwell is our mate Gary. Is it disappointing that those two haven't really kicked on as much as we kind of hoped as well? I know Corbin's kind of been a bit more of a bit player than Brightwell, but Brightwell had a strong showing against the Packers in London, but outside of that, hasn't really done anything, has he?
No, not at all. I mean, we kind of like, there's those players that we didn't necessarily have high expectations for, but when they came in, they flashed in bits, and they kind of showed you, okay, what could they do here? I mean, in training and in preseason games and stuff like that. So we kind of hoped for them to have better sort of careers than they have. Like, I don't want to go and bash the O-line again, but again, even in run, in the run game, the offensive line wasn't great at all. So I'm kind of hoping, again, if we can get some solid play in the offensive line, that will expand our running game a bit. But I do think for these two particular players, they haven't sort of put their hands up and sort of made a case for them to be long-term options. And with both of them going into the last year this year, I do think it's going to be very, very difficult for both of them to make this roster.
So if we switch tack then, and let's look at these two hungry rookies, rookie and kind of weird rookie that is a rookie but not a rookie. There's clearly some expectation here, but one thing that we can definitely say we've now got is speed. Like, holy crap, have we got some speed in these next two players? Like, let's look at Tyrone Tracy first. You know, last season, after 4 college seasons as a wide receiver, Tracy fully converted to running back in 2023 after being, I think he was probably just ground down because everyone kept asking him to do it. Every coach that he worked with was just like, oh, why don't why don't you switch? Why don't you have a little switch? And he just finally decided to do it. And he led the Boilermakers with 8 rushing touchdowns. We're second on the team with 716 yards on 113 carries. Tracy recorded over 100 yards on 3 occasions last year, 112 against Illinois, 122 and 2 touchdowns against Minnesota, and 160 yards on 16 carries against Northwestern. Another plus to Tracy is that he has experience in the kick return game, returning 17 kickoffs last season for 414 yards at a rate at 24.4 per return, whilst also recording a touchdown. Now, his 2023 stats, the rankings don't sound great, but you've just got to remember how many bloody players there are in college football to take all of these with a grain of salt. 714 rushing yards was 98th. 8 touchdowns was tied 60th. No fumbles, which is always good to see. 6.3 yards per carry, which is tied 90th. 506 of his 714 yards were after contact. He also had 138 receiving yards, but no receiving touchdowns. Now, the expectation for Tracy is that every one of Joe Shane's draft picks over the last 2 years have made the roster and contributed in at least one way or another. And we kind of expect that trend to continue with Tracy. The converted wide receiver may only have a small sample size as predominantly a runner, but his history as a wide receiver and a kick returner could give him the edge against others, especially seeing as he will be able to play special teams and catch the ball out of the backfield. Kev, wrap us up with the last of our running backs.
Yeah, so Dante Miller, Dante Turbo Miller, gotta get that right now, was an unfortunate victim of a misunderstanding with the NCAA rules that saw him ineligible to play for South Carolina in 2023. That didn't deter Miller, though, as he stuck around with the team, making sure he stayed in football shape, participating in workouts. It all paid off. As on his pro day, he ran a 4.27 40-yard dash and 28 reps of 225 on the bench press. That really turned heads, really made people stand up and take notice of him. For those numbers, by the way, would have been the top mark at this year's combine. The expectation for Miller this season is nothing to lose and everything to gain. He'll likely either sneak onto the roster or end up in the practice squad to continue his development. He's another one that could benefit from this new kickoff rules, especially with that speed. And I will tell you, this new kickoff rule is going to be phenomenal. It's going to be a must-watch. I really think there'll be some big plays busted from these. And someone like Miller coming in with the way he runs and that speed, it'll just be really interesting to see.
So if we have a look at the running backs we've just gone through then, so you've got 6 there. Previously, the Giants have always had 1 on the practice squad, and then it's kind of flipped. So in 2020 and 2023, there were 4. In 2021 and 2022, there were 5 running backs on the roster. But I do believe that in 21 and 22, the Giants played with a fullback, which we don't seem to do very often, and definitely didn't last year. So if we look at those previous rosters, 2020 saw, and we're going to hear his name again and again, I'm really sorry, Barkley, Lewis, Corbin Jr. and Penny. 2021, he's there again with Booker, Brightwell, Penny and Gillespie, who I'm going to be honest with you, he didn't exist. He's not a player. I don't remember him. He definitely didn't touch the ball. Surely not. 2022.
Or the Earth guy or something like that. The signing from the Viking, the Earth guy. He's like a proper nature lover guy. I'll send it in our group chat later.
You said the Earth guy. I thought we were talking, we got into like Fantastic Four kind of realm here. 2022, Barkley, Breeder, Brightwell, Williams, and Chris Myrick was the fullback on the depth chart week 1. And then last year, Saquon, Breeder, Brightwell, and Gray. So if you look at the current players, Singletary has a 3-year contract, 2.25 million fully guaranteed this year. 4.75 million next year with 3.5 of that guaranteed, and then 2026 he's due 5 million, but there's no guarantees on that. Tyrone Tracy Jr., Eric Gray, Dante Miller, Gary Brightwell, and Deshaun Corbin all have no guarantees on their contracts. Tyrone Tracy Jr. is on a 4-year contract that starts at $795,000. Eric Gray has 3 years left. His contract this year is $915,000. Dante Miller, 795, much like Tyrone Tracy, but he only gets a 3-year contract. And then Brightwell and Corbin are in the last year of their deals. No guarantees on either of those contracts. Brightwell due to get 1.05 million, and Corbin 915,000. Now the Giants have averaged 4.5 running backs, so I don't know who's going to have a leg cut off this year. Across Joe Shane's 2 years as GM, and it's probably safe to count Devin, Singletary, Tyrone Tracy, and Eric Gray as the 3 probable locks for this roster. After that, it's anyone's game, with the sparsely used Brightwell and Corbin coming up against the unknown Miller. If Miller loses out, he probably goes to the practice squad, and with the Giants previously only having 1 back on the practice squad, it could be the end for one of our aforementioned multi-year players in Corbin and Brightwell. So, lads, for running backs, like I said, 4 or 5 with the practice squad. So let's assume it's 4 and 1. Singletary, Gray, and Tyrone Tracy make the roster. Who is the 4th man, and who misses out on the practice squad? Kev, we'll go you first.
Oh, I'm going with the 3 you said, obviously, and Dante Miller making that. I think with his potential ability to be a real factor in the kickoff game, he could be more seen as a special teams type player. And I actually think, not only is this running back room cheap, I think it's very diverse now. And I think if these players can actually live up to some of their potential, with Eric Gray being more of that between the tackles type runner, your Devin Singletary, like your do-it-all, go-to running back, and your Tyrone Tracy, who's electric, who's absolutely electric with that speed and his contact balance, as yards after contact, like we've talked about. He's like a pinball machine in there, and he can get away and he can take it to the house. So I think it's a really diverse running back group, and I think it's one that we will see maybe someone like Tracy taking the majority of the snaps as the second half of the season goes on. But I just think, to go back to the point, I think Dante Miller's ability in the speed and the run game and potential in the return game could see him nick that extra roster spot.
And what about Corbin and Brightwell? Do you see either of them going onto the practice squad, or do you think that it could be goodbye to both?
I think it'll be goodbye to both, and the practice squad running back could be someone released from another roster.
Shane, who's your 4th man out of those 3?
I'm going for our mate Gary. Every year he defies the odds. Every year we say Gary's going to be cut, and Gary somehow stays strong, somehow makes the roster. So I'm going our mate Gary to make the roster again. I'm staying loyal.
And then Corbin to shake out of the roster completely then, with Miller on the practice squad.
Yeah, spot on.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because in previous years, Joe Shane, or in their first year, should I say, Joe Shane and Brian Dable had 5 running backs, and with one as a fullback. I don't really see any of those names as a fullback, though. I don't think they're built like that. But I know there's been some chatter around Chapman. Our little undrafted rookie free agent, about him maybe having the perfect build for a fullback, and that would definitely be a story, wouldn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I was so fine to come in, and he did well. He was the only player we signed from that rookie minicamp tryout who wasn't an undrafted free agent, and he hasn't really got the ideal size for the 3-technique defensive tackle, but he's got that tenacity and that sort of he's got talent and he's got the tenacity, and he has played a little bit of fullback in the past. And we've seen his name escapes me now, but a player in the past who kind of played both ways as well. But don't be surprised to see some of these blocking tight ends play sort of the fullback H-back role, like your Stall and your Manhurts and these type of players who are very, very good blockers in the run game. So I wouldn't be surprised to see some of them in the backfield.
Absolutely. So there we go. That is the first of many state of plays. And unfortunately, that is all we have time for this week. However, we will be back next Thursday to bring you all the latest news from OTAs as they rumble on, and a breakdown of the wide receivers, where we have currently 14 on the 90-man roster. So it's going to be really fun trying to choose them and place those across the roster and the practice squad next week. Anything to add before we go, boys?
That just, it's good sort of talking the breakdown. Obviously, like we feels like we've done it for numerous episodes in the past, but kind of getting into the quarterback position. There's going to be other positions that we're going to get into, and hopefully for everyone who tunes in, watches live, listens back to us, we'll bridge that gap nicely between now and September. I think I posted in our group chat the other day, 16 Sundays left to go. So, not that we're counting it down.
Yeah, no, just really good to get back on with you boys tonight and talk things all Giants. It's a good place to be at the moment. I know the quarterback situation is not where any of us want it to be. We know that. It needs to improve massively. And DJ will get that first opportunity to go out there and show if he can improve or not. But yeah, really good to be back on again, lads. And I'm definitely looking forward to this wide receiver conversation next week because, in years past, it was obvious who the wide receivers were kind of going to be. This year, there's so many on the peripheral, on the bubble. So it'd be really good to get into that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you look at that receiver room, it's been missing that alpha dog. We now have the alpha dog, but we almost have quite a lot of players there who are very, very good at being a 2, a 3, or even a depth piece, to the point where someone's going to be disappointed at the when it comes down to cut down day. So it's going to be very, very interesting. And obviously, don't forget, Ford Wheaton, robbed of his rookie year with an ACL, was turning heads in training camp, and there's no reason he can't do it again. Right. Bit of a shorter episode. I mean, let's say shorter episode, 15 minutes shorter than normal. But thank you, obviously, to everyone who's stuck with us. As always, remember to like this video and subscribe to us on YouTube. You can also hit the bell to be notified of when we are live, when YouTube decides to roster us for a different day. If you aren't already, follow us at the socials at the bottom, or check out all the links in the description below. My thanks, as ever, go to Shane and to Kev for joining me. To all of you watching or listening, we are signing off. Until next time, let's go Giants.